Hello, I am Baal Kadmon, and I would like to thank you for watching and or listening to this podcast. This podcast is going to address the concept of the whore of Babylon and the beast in some way. Now, I wrote a book called The Antichrist, A Man, a Myth, an Idea about 2 years ago, and I explain, who the beast is, who the whore of Babylon is, etc., etc. Now, what I'm finding in the occult space particularly, and this is over the last many, many years, even before I wrote the book, is that there is this sense that the whore of Babylon is a person, is a personification, almost like the female equivalent of the beast. And some circles, they say, well, she is the Lilith and all of that. Basically, that this is a person and not necessarily personification of something. And I address that in the book, and I will be addressing it here today. Another thing that she's associated with is the beast, right? The conception is that she and the beast are sort of working together, and that might seem that way at first, but in fact, the greatest enemy of the whore of Babylon is the beast. They are not friends. They are enemies. And the thing is that it's hard to tell that unless you read through the scriptures that these two elements are found in. And where do we find the concept of the whore of Babylon and the beast? We find it in the book of Revelation. Now, there is a precedence for the beastly image, the horns, and all that stuff from the Old Testament, but the book of Revelation sort of distills it a little bit, takes from the Old Testament, adds a little bit to it, and then distills the image into a much more horrifying thing. Now, in the book of Revelation, we have Babylon, the whore of Babylon, and the beast working together. But if you read it actually closely, one, you'll find out who actually the whore of Babylon is, and it's not a person, and that, in fact, the beast is her enemy, not her consort. And I think this is important because a lot of people in the occult, and even Christianity for that matter, believe that they're somehow working in unison, but they are, in fact, enemies. Now, why is this important? I mean, it's important because obviously you want to quote correctly, right? I mean, because these concepts do come from somewhere, and specifically more the book of Revelation, but also you want to understand what the whole concept of Babylon is. I mean, throughout the biblical tradition, the Old Testament, the New Testament, Babylon is often related to the Antichrist. But the thing is that it's not quite that simple. There's a lot more to it. Now, the whore of Babylon is a mysterious character in the New Testament. There's no doubt about it. It's not initially clear who she is or it is, but in some ways, she almost appears at first as the counterpart to the Antichrist, and may even be a kind of Antichrist herself, right? She is also associated with the beast. Now remember, the Antichrist and the beast are not necessarily the same, but a lot of people associate her and the beast as being one entity, but it is not true. Let's look at Revelation chapter 17, verse 1 through 18. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with wine of her adulteries." Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast, which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will become." This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet become. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Then the angel said, "The waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked, and they will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled." Now listen to this last verse. "The woman you saw is the great city." Keep that in mind, the great city. So here we see that she is intimately related to the beast. On one hand, she's riding it, and on the other hand, she is destroyed by the beast. So clearly the beast is not her consort, but is actually her enemy. In the book of Revelations, the above account seems to also be referring to political kingdoms, and some people say that it's Rome. But I will tell you now, Rome is probably one of those heads, but it's not all Rome. So the most popular interpretation is that the imagery in this particular passage is the Catholic Church. The Protestants think that the Catholic Church is this beastly entity, and that the whore of Babylon is actually the church. But the text actually makes it pretty clear. It actually tells you who it is. Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, it says, "Their bodies will lie in the public square of the great city." Remember, we mentioned the great city in the last verses, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. Also, where the Lord was crucified. Notice that last part. It tells you right there where the city is located. And remember, Babylon, she was just called the great city. So where was Jesus crucified? Not Sodom, not Egypt, not Babylon, not Rome. What was the great city then? Jerusalem. That's where he was crucified. The whore of Babylon is the great city, as you saw, and the great city is Jerusalem. Jerusalem has been called a whore and faithless before. Isaiah chapter 1 verse 21, it says, "How is the faithful city become a harlot? It was full of judgment, righteousness lodged in it, but now murderers." Jeremiah chapter 2 verse 20, "For of old time I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands, and thou sayest, I will not transgress, when upon every hill, under every green tree, thou wanderest, playing the harlot." Ezekiel chapter 16 verse 20, "Moreover, thou hast taken thy sons and thy daughters, whom thou hast borne unto me, and thou hast sacrificed unto them to be devoured. And this of thy whoredom is a small matter." So this idea of Jerusalem being the whore of Babylon is not Rome, but actually goes way back to the Old Testament. So there you have it. We have textual proof that the whore of Babylon is not a person. It's not Rome. It's not the Vatican. It is the great city. And the great city in the book of Revelations is the city in which Jesus was crucified in. Which city was that? It wasn't Rome. It was Jerusalem. So, there you have it. This is where the whole whore of Babylon conception comes from. It's not a person. It's not even a group of people. It is of the personification of Jerusalem and her quote-unquote sinning ways. Now, can we personify it as a human and incorporate those aspects into ourselves? Of course we can. But really the main focus was to show you that that she is not a person. The beast is not a person, and the beast was not her friend. The beast was her enemy. He burned her and ate her, for Christ's sake. No pun intended. So I hope that dispels some of the myth around the whore of Babylon and the beast. If you're interested to learn more, you can grab my book, The Antichrist, A Man, a Myth, an Idea. And I go into much greater depth about this. And then you'll see, literally, I'll show you the original texts in their original languages, and you can see for yourself that all these misconceptions we have about the beast and the whore of Babylon and all of those related issues are actually not what people say that they are. Because I go deep into the source text. So anyway, that is the end of this podcast. Thank you for listening or watching. I will supply the link below to the link to the Amazon book for that I referenced for this particular podcast. I will speak to you soon.